Welcome to God with George Ortega. This is episode number 97. I'm recording it on Monday, March 8th at 8:09 p.m. Eastern Time. And first, I've got an announcement. God is scaling up the production quality of this series. Basically, essentially, she had me purchase recently an interface so that I can like plug in my bass guitar, into this Zoom, excuse me, platform, and and jam. So and I'm excited about this, so I got to figure it out. I tried it earlier today, and it seems to work, but I got to make a few recordings, make sure it's working properly. But anyway, that's cool. So and I'm gonna basically, one reason I'm gonna do that is I'll be playing some lead bass, some improvised bass riffs, just make something up, and this will be an example of this music am I freely willing this music? I don't even want, some days, for example, I'll play, I really like what's coming out. Other days I play, I'm saying, what's going on here? Yesterday I was playing, it was all so good. So anyway, so I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully it'll be good. For now, and the other announcement, I guess, is God apparently has me developing a bit of a method to this. So apparently she doesn't want me to over prepare, so I've got my nifty list of, actually I don't know where it is now, but there's a list somewhere of topics, if I get, into I don't know what to talk about. But what she's having me do now is, 5-10 minutes before each episode to meditate, to just close my eyes, just meditate on what it is I want to talk about. And that will be the preparation for the series. That'll be my routine, so, and again, this is what God tells me now. I mean, for all I know, it could be an exercise in taking directions, but it may turn out that that's not the right thing. God does this. I don't know why. Anyway, so all right, so that's that. And now, so I was thinking, I was doing that because I was eating a little soup earlier, and I was thinking of what I would talk about. And what came to mind is the vastness of God. And I'm not sure what the utility is in exploring this and contemplating this, or at least I'm not sure it can be expressed in words, in a cognitive way. But I suspect, I anticipate that on some spiritual level, it's a very beneficial, useful practice. So the idea is we start with the attribute of God being infinite. And so what does that mean? Let's relative to what we know about the universe today, that it's about almost 14 billion years old, and it's got 2 to 3 trillion galaxies, each with 200 to 300 billion stars, perhaps more. So what that tells me, conceptually, all right, so you've got the physical universe that gives us some, some description of what this reality is about. And then you have conceptual understandings. For example, if God is conceptually infinite and God, well, take our description of the physical universe. God, it seems very unplausible that this is the only world that God has created. From the two to 3 trillion galaxies, each with 2 to 300 billion stars. So conceptually, though, even beyond that, if God is infinite, God can do what is infinite, meaning God plausibly, presumably, has already created an infinite number of, actually, I think I'm not sure that works, but God has created, and I don't know about already, but again, like, so God created an infinite number of worlds exactly like this. That is an implication of infinity. God has already created an infinite number of worlds that are categorically, in so many ways, different than ours. And I mean, yes, that is mind-blowing. I mean, like, you know, and you can say this, like, for example, oh, this is all right. And again, these are the implications of the attribute of infinity that we hear about, we kind of understand conceptually, but we don't think about all that much. And so, like, for example, God created you. Okay, you're like, you know, thinking of yourself right now. God created you. Now consider God being infinite, created not just you, but an infinite number of yous. And as I say that, I'm, you know, I have to note that even though it seems logical, you know, this kind of like assertion is somewhat speculative, you know, because maybe God didn't. But the point is that is the meaning, the implication of this concept of of infinity, that God, you know, God creates, you know, whatever God can do infinitely, or God has done infinitely, or is doing infinitely, or will do infinitely. You know, again, this, like, when it comes to like infinity, like God created an infinite number of views, right? Now, are we referring to in the past, where he will add to that infinity in the future? Because like infinity is really a concept that you can't really add to. So again, so like, and this is part of the value of this series. It gets me to think about this stuff because you know, I've thought about it, but not all that much. Gets you to think about it. And just, it deepens our understanding of scripture, of God, of who we are in relation to God. And now God has reminded me of something cool that I wanted to talk about us in relation to God. Maybe it'll come. I don't know. I'm really grateful to God that she has kind of like allowed me, enabled me, compelled me to move from like, oh, you know, what am I going to talk about today? You know, like it may be not so interesting, you know, whatever. I'm going to flounder, like trying to like seek out appropriate topics. And so, you know, I'm very grateful that over this last week or two, God has said, you know, you've been doing this for like over 90 episodes, or about 90 episodes. You know, I want you to just like go on there and don't worry about what you're going to say. Because, and this is like the assumption that because, you know, God is saying to me, don't worry, I'll tell you what to say at the right time. You know, I may have you like not say anything for 2-3 minutes at a time, which may feel awkward, but I will save you. I will rescue you. You have to trust me. And this is great. So I trust God now to have this show go as well as it needs to go, you know, which is fine. Okay. So let's see, we've got about 18 minutes left. And what else? God. All right. Sometimes I'll stray a bit from everything being completely about God. You know, and I'm not sure that's the best thing, but you know, God has me right now, you know, mentioning that I've been having the thought recently that this COVID period we're in, this Trump presidency we just emerged from, thankfully, may be the beginning of what we would refer to in Judaism as a messianic era, what Christians might refer to as the second coming, that's been referred to as, for example, the age of Aquarius, this time where we as a humanity, and presumably to include all other animals as well, get our acts together, so successfully that we create. Naturally, God is doing all the creating, but God is using us, as God's hands. It's time for us to create a paradise on earth, a bliss on earth. And this, and I say this notwithstanding the climate challenges that we have, that yes, I mean, like, it could be that we've gone beyond the point of no return, that it's going to get hotter and hotter and there's nothing we can do about it. Or it could be that we come up with a solution, I don't know. But my sense is notwithstanding all of that, that we are basically, it seems, moving into an age where we're going to be doing well, not just some people, everyone, and not just we people, animals as well. That's, that is a very gratifying thought. All right, now let's tie this to God, because if I'm going to bring this up, again, at least the effort to bring it into God. And again, we got to remember that God is feeding me all these lines. I'm just waiting, for God's cue. All right, so how do we understand the shift in our world, hopefully, within the context of God? Well, I mean, an easy way is that God designed us to seek pleasure and avoid pain. That's all we do. And if you'll notice, since especially the creation of civilization, we've made great strides in creating a better world. We've made great strides in creating a world that's more pleasant for more people. So yes, we make mistakes. Yes, we do things that are harmful to us, to each other. But the trajectory of our progress has been to create a better and better world where there's more and more pleasure and happiness, less and less suffering and unhappiness. So, and this has to be, I would believe, God's purpose for creating us. That, I mean, like, it may seem like a long time for us, like, to count millennia, hundreds of years, whatever, that humans have suffered, but like, I guess relative to God's mind, it's like God thinks to create us, and then is already at the point, understanding the point of that the point of the creation is for us to exist in perfect virtuous bliss. And so, like, in God's mind, it's like, oh yeah, let's do this. Oh yeah, it's done. And actually even more so than that, because like, yeah, let's get into this. An aspect of God that is unlike us. I mean, we were made in the image of God, but not in the complete image, apparently, because like God has all of this power, we don't have any power. Big difference. But and I mentioned this recently relative to our minds, parallel versus serial processing. Our minds can only do one thing at a time, whereas God's mind can do everything all at once, an infinite number of things all at once. So, so relative to God and time, it's, I mentioned God having the thought to create us, and then the next thought, oh yes, I'm going to create them, and then they're going to live in complete virtuous bliss, and I describe that as happening almost instantaneously. But I think we can make the case that it did happen instantaneously because God is omniscient, all-knowing. So like, if God is all-knowing, God knew at the point in time where God said that she would create this world for human beings, that that she was intending this to ultimately result in a complete virtuous bliss for all of humanity and presumably all of the other life forms that are capable of that, that have a are capable of sentience. Some animals may not be, like amoebas, like we feel emotions, pleasure, pain, and stuff. Amoebas may not have that. They have this propensity to kind of like to maybe move away from, like in a petri dish, away from the light or away from the darkness or toward a food substrate or something. But I don't, that they may not be able to feel pain, pleasure and pain, which, and actually, I mean, like if we want to, just briefly digress, with this, I mean, like sentient beings, human beings that can feel, or beings that can feel only pleasure, that can feel pleasure and pain, only came about 300 million years ago, apparently, with the decapods, the lobsters, crabs and stuff. All right, so. All right, now I lost my train of thought, but I will have it. I will wait patiently for God to tell me what to do next, and that's what I'm going to do right now. And I'm not even going to force it. I'm just going to like have faith, confidence, trust that at the moment God, decides, or she probably decided already. Again, this idea that everything is happening all at once for God. So, all right. So what do we want to talk about? Let's talk about in relation to God having created this world with the intention that we inhabit it in complete virtuous bliss. Let's talk about what that says about God. That is a very good thing to do. And like if God extends it, like, for example, that like before we were born and after we die, we return to another dimension. I don't like to use dimension because, like, that's a technical term meaning like space, up, down, spatial, whatever. And there's really 4 dimensions, but like in other realms, like after we die, we may move into other realms where it would be the same thing. We would be experiencing complete virtuous bliss. Or there wouldn't be a need for virtue because like we're completely blissful and that's our state. And there's nothing virtuous, something we have to do, to counter what's not virtuous. And so like we actually may be living in a world where we're completely blissed out, manifesting God's bliss. And whatever we do is right, impossible for us to do any wrong. That's kind of interesting. So like what I'm trying to say is like, what this points to is this idea that that God is supremely good. That God's purpose for creating us is supremely good. That God truly, truly loves us. Yes, it's difficult for us to see, when there's so much suffering that I can't explain. But again, when you look at the big picture, how life for us, in so many ways is so much better than it was 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago, even for the kings and queens. I mean, like, no, they didn't have cell phones and cars and indoor, heating and air conditioning and all that. I'm sorry, we even many of the poorest of us live better than kings and queens of yesteryear, and we have God to thank for that. That's how wonderful this world is becoming. And all right, now with 8.5 minutes left to go, I'm going to throw a bit of a wrench in this, because along with our God designing us to seek pleasure and avoid pain, to be happy and to avoid being unhappy, God has also designed us, apparently through our conditioning, problem solve, to confront things that seem to need to be understood, to understand. Actually, God has programmed us to be beings who want to understand. So relative to that, fine, God is good in so many ways, and it's important to appreciate that in order to avail ourselves of how wonderful God is, how wonderful our lives generally are. But here's the rub in this is that, well, God has also created pain. I mean, and again, I'm asking this question without having a satisfying enough answer for myself. But how do why? And I've asked this before. I'll continue asking this because this is probably the quintessential question, in the quintessential question relative to who we are. Because if there was no pain, no suffering, yeah, we know things, we don't know things, doesn't matter. But so why did God create, beings like us that God has programmed to want pleasure, to want to be virtuous, to want to understand, and then deprive us of that pleasure and virtue and understanding? I don't have an answer, but that is the question. We've addressed it before within the context of, well, it's kind of like a parent, that parents will punish their children because they love their children. All right, but that doesn't work completely, because parents, for example, we as human beings cannot create kids how we want them to be. They just come out, and so much of it is completely, it's genetic, whatever. Whereas God, in creating us, has complete control over that. So there's a difference. We're not God, in creating, little us's. So yeah, and again, another satisfying but not completely satisfying answer is well, to God, this time of suffering is just like the blink of an eye. It's just here, it's gone. So look at the big picture, understand that the next moment we're all going to be blissed out. I mean, again, but while we're living through this, sometimes when it's not all that pleasant, that answer doesn't completely satisfy. And couple that with what we started out with when we were talking about God's infinity, this idea that God presumably has created an infinite number of infinitely blissful worlds where every being in this world is completely blissed out, meaning, feeling the most complete joy, peace, pleasure possible. And so God has already, yes, God has done some things we don't disagree with, but if God has also created all these infinite number of completely blissful, infinite universe worlds, we want to, in other words, we want to maintain that understanding. God is awesome. God is amazingly awesome in God's virtue and in God creating all these blessings for us. All right, with 3.5 minutes left. So we, and you want to know something? Again, this is episode number 97. God may not want me to pursue this. God may say, all right, after the 20th time you've asked this question, you're no more enlightened, they're no more enlightened, so let's move on to something else. Because yes, I think there are some questions about which the answer must remain inaccessible to us. And that you know, that's based on our finite, you know, physical forms. In other words, like if we're finite, we can't know what's going on, you know, in places where we're not. Simple, you know, in other galaxies, you know. So, all right. So yes, God had me do this, and I'm glad. Again, after, you know, 97 episodes, I was thinking, oh, like, am I going to have to, like, you know, end the show because I've run out of material? Well, guess what? I've got the infinite God as my chief writer, and she says, no, you keep doing the show, at least for now. She may change her mind. She does that. But for now, she's saying, yeah, keep doing it. I will keep writing for you. And it'll be interesting enough that that at least you'll be entertained and informed. And you know, you know, these, you know, all right. Now, some of this stuff may not seem relevant to us, but my work, you know, some people do, like doctors, they will save a life that day. They will do an amazing amount of goodness that very day, you know. Whereas like my work is like, well, in 20, 30, 40 years, people will understand what I'm presenting. And this will be a part of their more fully understanding this. You know, so it's like I try to look at the big picture. I mean, I don't ignore my happiness or your happiness. You know, I will try to dedicate episodes to God and happiness. Yes, I mean, hopefully God will allow me to remember this. It's an obligation. God, it's not like happiness is a gift that here you go, you know, you're welcome. It's like God obliges us to be happy. It's a commandment. You know, if you're a parent, you give your kids what they want. They've been screaming about it for weeks and weeks. You give it to them finally, they should enjoy it, right? And God requires that of us. All right, thanks for watching. About 40 seconds left. Catch this every Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. on White Plains Community Media, channel 76 if you get Optimum, 45 if you get Verizon, and the episodes are on YouTube. And I want to try to get some people on here, some rabbis ideally, whatever, but like, you know, God, for whatever reason, hasn't had me do that yet, but let's pray. Let's pray that she will have me do this soon, because I think, yes, with more, the more, the better, right? If I get one more person that's better, two better. All right, thanks for watching. God willing, I will see you soon.